London after dark isn't just nightlife. One bad move and a rave can turn into a riot. Scouts sniff out spots, timing it for bank holiday weekends when security is thin. Word spreads underground like wildfire. There's no invites, no tickets, just trusted whispers that pull in hundreds. Ravers, goths, activists reclaiming the spot for the little man. You won't get bouncers and velvet ropes in these places. You're not going to see doormen checking IDs. This is what happens when the only thing that stands between order and chaos is you and your dog. Anti establishment groups source warehouse buildings for their next big rave that feel more comfortable in the shadows than in cocktail bars. And you have the 90s ravers that are still chasing that feeling of something exclusive. To them, they think it's something romantic, underground, like they're part of something real, sticking two fingers up to the system. But no one cares who owns the place or the fact that the machinery probably worth more than their car. They just see an open space and decide tonight it's theirs. Now that's the type of world you're stepping into as a dog handler. It's a place between law and chaos. Once the music starts, common sense fades, people get brave in a crowd. One of those weekends, a local businessman got word that his warehouse, stacked with tens of thousands of pounds worth of equipment, was on the hit list. He wasn't taking any chances. These spots are gold mines for thieves and vandals once a party kicks off. At that time, I was working with other dog handlers at a nearby industrial site. I had an American Bulldog bailiff. He was my go-to dog at the time. He was in his prime, muscular, fearless, well-trained, and hardened from all the conflicts we've been through together. We've clocked up some serious mileage by this point, tackling everything from empty industrial sites, evicting squatters, and facing crowds alongside security and police personnel. So that Friday night, the businessman turns up looking nervous, sweating. Words out, his warehouse is the next building to hold the rave. Already scouted his place. The machinery inside worth tens of thousands at risk. What is security? But here's the snag. It's a one-off job. And when he was informed about the cost implications, he wasn't really committing to any formal contracts. So nothing was signed. I was a bit disappointed because I've been working on this job now for a number of months and it's a bit routine. And I was hoping for a little bit more excitement, something that me and Bailiff could really test ourselves with. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit of excitement. Every dog handler knows that buzz you get when things start to kick off, that adrenaline rush when things get real and you're with your dog. But here's the thing, people often think it's the dog that does all the work. I'm going to tell you that at the end of the day, it's the handler that makes all the decisions. And when things start to get tricky, you got to know when you have to step in. It's not dog training, so don't be there thinking you're going to be watching your dog do all the work. Situations can happen which dog training don't prepare you for. You need to know you got to make decisions on the spot. Make sure you're within the law, but making sure you get home safe. So come that Saturday night now, things were kind of quiet as usual, logging the logs, doing the routine. Around 11 p.m. now, that businessman turns back up, jumps out of the car, shouting, "They've broke in. They're playing music." The police told him, "It's a council now." We knew what that meant. You're basically on your own. By the time the council was to get involved, his machinery would be trashed. At this point, he was willing to throw any kind of money to get security. I actually felt a little bit bad for the guy. But here's the problem. It was late and we couldn't really abandon our current job. On top of that, not all the other handlers' dogs were up for this type of job. Here's something a lot of people may not realize. There are dogs out there with security dog certification or protection sport titles, but they're just not fit for purpose, just like the handlers. There's one thing covering a quiet site with CCTV and a cup of tea. But when real trouble starts, most of them are folding like a deck chair. That's why criminals barely take them seriously. There was no man security or stewards backing us up. So we figured we'll need at least 4 or 5 solid handlers with serious dogs. Time was also against us, and we knew that with every minute that passed, the crowds were getting bigger and there was more risk of something getting damaged. We managed to get hold of one dog handler by phone, and he said they wouldn't be able to get there for another hour. At the warehouse, it wasn't just kids on a cheap night out. This was a cocktail of chaos. Squatters, ex-ravers, activists, and anarchists. They see every abandoned building as a symbol of public property reclaimed from the system. Some were seasoned organizers who knew how to cut chains, bypass alarms, and set up music systems within 15 minutes. Others are agitators, hooded up and watching for security. The type that starts arguments and starts telling you about their rights. The rest are the clueless first timers that are there for the music and don't realize that things can turn ugly. You're stepping into a mix of people that don't want you there. Politics, aggression, and adrenaline. They didn't respect the owner, and they had genuine beliefs that they had rights to take over the property. Big T took lead on proceedings. He's been on the door scenes for years. Real old school spots where people turn up with tools and T's got to remove them. Big T prides himself on owning only serious dogs, the type that bites first and asks questions later. T didn't beat around the bush. He said, I'm going to be real with you. We're not going to take none of these other dog handlers with us. Their dogs are not ready. It will be too late before the other dog handler gets to us. So it's either we go now or just forget about it. But wait, not so long ago, T was saying we needed about 5 dog handlers. And now he's saying we can do it alone. T is very experienced, but I know we can sometimes miscalculate. I really wanted to trust his judgment. So I said, let's do it. So I grabbed Bailiff, put him in T's van in the cage next to T's dog Kilo, and then we sped off down towards the industrial park. Bailiff could sense the mood. He was pumped up, barking, ready for action. He's the kind of dog that doesn't need no encouragement to get fired up. Within minutes, we arrived at the industrial park. We turned the corner, you could hear the music blasting. Not knowing what to expect, I just remember feeling excitement and fear at the same time. Big T just slammed on the brakes. No plan, no prep talk, just instinct. He just jumped out the van, clipped up Kilo, and moved like a soldier. That's when I knew whatever was about to happen next, it wouldn't be clean. The moment I jumped out the vehicle, you could feel the bass thumping. There was smoke coming from the doorway, flashing lights. It was a full rave takeover. T was moving fast. I barely grabbed Bailiff. Big T was already charging towards the front door. Someone by the door spotted us and shouted out security. They tried to close up the front door before we got in, but Kilo got shut in between the door. Me and T prized it back open. That's when the shouting started. And one of the lads with a metal pipe with some crazy look in his eye, he swung towards me. Before I could even block, Bailiff just lunged forward, grabbed him by the legs, dropped him down, and the guy was screaming like a baby. People pulled out their phones. Kilo just lunged towards the crowd, snapping, and they were moving back and shouting, "Get your pitbull off him, get your pitbull off him." Bailiff was under control and he came off clean. Literally, it all happened in seconds. So we pushed through into the dark, smoky warehouse where you couldn't even tell friend from foe. People were scattering around like wild animals while some were heading to the exit. It felt like anything could happen. I was on high alert. Time just seemed to slow down. Bailiff was snarling and barking and we was pushing the crowd to one side. We had the upper hand. T held the entrance door and was preventing anyone else from coming in. The music went down a few notches and by this the crowd had mainly backed up into a corner. T was still by the entrance door, so I moved over in the middle, giving the people some room. There seemed to be a moment of calm. T started instructing people to leave. With that, a few ringleaders seemed to pipe up and started giving insults and still claiming they have rights. Within seconds, bottles started flying towards me and T. And unfortunately, one broke near us and I didn't realise Bailiff cut his foot. He was bleeding. 100 different things started flooding my mind at the same time. How are we going to deal with this situation? Will it get on top? What do we do next? We looked towards T. He looked at me, and we instinctively knew we had to do something. Suddenly, though, the power just shut off. The lights, the music, everything just went off. Now the tables turned. We was able to deploy the dogs to start herding the crowds of people out of the building. There was little resistance. The music was replaced with police sirens you can hear coming towards the warehouse just as everything's done. That is so typical. 3 riot vans turned up apparently because they heard dogs were being set on people. But once they got details of the real story, they were disappointed because they never got piece of the action. T was breathing heavy and Kilo was scanning every corner. Bailiff next to me calm, waiting for the next command that never came. The businessman turned back up and he explained that he was the one who actually got the power turned off. The actual warehouse seemed like an afterthought. It was dirty, grimy, bottles, puddles. To be fair, there was no damage. A few stragglers lingered, filming on their phones. They're the criminals, but they act like you're the one caused the problem. The businessman thanked us again like we saved his livelihood. Perhaps we did. And then again, perhaps that was part one.